Tonight, I'll be narrating Kinda Thing by Saturdead. A long time ago, someone asked me a strange question. It was my last year of high school. I was drunk out of my mind and crashing at a friend's place. We were coming down from an after party, and half of us didn't want to go home. Two guys were sleeping on the floor. One was nodding on and off in a lazy boy in the corner, still gripping a 40. I was on the couch with a curly-haired girl, talking about nothing.
You know how to spot a kinda thing?
What kind of thing?
No,
She said, lazily shaking her head.
not a kind of thing. A kinda thing.
You're not making any sense. She poked me in the chest and put her head on my shoulder, falling half asleep as she explained.
It's a game. It teaches you to think about stuff.
Alright, what is it?
You sure you want to know?
I mean, now I have to. I was barely paying attention. My hands smelled like cheese snacks and rubber. We'd been playing ping pong and the rackets were kinda cheap.
Think of a place you spend a lot of time in, like several times a week, but not all the time, not like your bedroom.
I don't spend all my time in my bedroom.
Come on, you got a place in mind?
I thought about this alleyway between my family home and my neighbor. It was this fenced-off alley, not big enough to drive a car through. I went there every day on my way to class. I nodded. I got one.
Now think of something in that place. Something you know, but don't own. Something you've seen, but got no pictures of.
Give me a sec. I thought about this one particular thing. It was a little teddy bear keychain that someone had put on one of the fence posts. Nothing big, just a plastic thing with a heart in the middle of the chest, and an all-too-neutral teddy bear smile. Just a fun little quirk on an otherwise depressing stretch of concrete. Alright, I got a thing,
You know what colors it is?
she asked. I had an idea, but I wasn't 100% certain. There was some red in there, I know that much. A bit of yellow, but I couldn't say exactly what was what. Maybe the nose was black? Kinda, I said. She looked up at me and poked me in the chest again.
That's a kinda thing, she muttered. They're pretty cool.
She sat up and stretched a little, kicking over an empty can. The guy with the 40 had fully admitted defeat and curled up into a ball.
They exist on the edge of things.
She explained.
It could be blue. It could be yellow. It could change into red. There's no way to really know. It only exists in your memory.
But it's red.
How can you know for sure? Like, for sure.
I can check it.
What if it wasn't red yesterday? Do you know for sure what it was yesterday?
I mean, things don't change color.
Kinda things do.
You're making this sound like a ghost story.
Who says it isn't?
We got into this weird wine-fueled philosophy nonsense that led us nowhere, and ended up making out on the patio, staying up till dawn. As the sun rose and a car came to take her away, I decided to drag myself home. As I wandered, I took the route through that alley, and like always, the teddy bear keychain hung on one of the posts, except the thing wasn't red or yellow. It was blue, like my mother's novelty sunflowers. There were a couple of red spots along the paws, but the main thing was all blue. I'd been certain it was supposed to be all red, but maybe I just focused on the details. I picked it up, put it in my pocket, and instantly forgot about it. I wouldn't see that keychain for a long time, and I wouldn't think much of it, but I guess That's the nature of kinda things. I saw the keychain a couple of times over the next few years. When I moved into my college dorm, I had it resting on my windowsill. I think my mom put it there. At some point, I knocked it over and it rolled under a nightstand where I didn't find it until years later when I graduated. From there, it ended up in a box of knickknacks, which ended up on a shelf in my apartment. It wasn't an exciting journey, but it was my journey. You sort of forget how long things stick around until you're old enough to look back. I got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and got working on a doctorate. As part of my doctorate, I had to teach a class. My expertise circled around information science with a slight leaning towards digital architecture and preservation, but I wanted to give my classes something to make them really stick. That was the first time in years that I thought of kinda things. Problem was, once I went looking for that teddy bear keychain to bring to class, I couldn't find it. When I held my first class, I told them all about the kinda things. I asked my students to consider what their own kinda things would be. It was all framed in the context of how important it is to preserve factual information in a way that makes it contextually aware. But for all the first-year students, it turned into a thing to share at parties. And the circle of drunk philosophers continued for another generation. It was fun though. They all had something. A cracked coffee cup, an old bike wheel abandoned near the football field, a baseball cap on the top shelf that they couldn't reach. All little things that didn't matter but were important enough to be made and forgotten about. And now I had a whole class thinking about them. Every class I taught heard that story. I skipped the part where I made out and smelled of Fritos. They didn't need the details. Not everyone knew my name, but they all remembered me asking that first question on the first day of class. You know how to spot a kinda thing? By the time I turned 27, I finished my doctorate. I had a paid position, but I was looking for something more permanent. You don't go chasing tenure right away, and I wanted to do more experimental work, maybe field work even. I had applied for a couple positions at colleges out of state, not Ivy League, but up there in the charts. I figured this was as good a time as any to stretch my wings after spending all my life in one state and city. One of my proposals got picked up, and my time as a teacher of that one class was swiftly coming to an end. One more semester and that would be it. It was bittersweet. I'd gotten to know my colleagues pretty well. They were a fun bunch of nerds having board game nights in the lounge. They all had this thing where they used cleaned out vodka bottles as water bottles, just so students could take funny pictures and go, "This is my professor," lol. I was sad to see it come to an end, but it was time to move on to newer things. New can't always be bad, and my colleagues had planned one hell of a going away party. It was the last day of class, a Friday. They were holding a bit of an event for my last class, and all my colleagues were there. Some held speeches, and the students were invited to share some anecdotes as well. There were a lot of nice words. I won't lie, I got a bit teary-eyed. Once things came to an end, everything gets put into perspective of how much you're going to miss it. Every stupid little detail. As a final hurrah, they revealed a gift to me. Something for me to bring to my next office. I could tell it was a box of some kind, covered in a big white cloth. They pulled it off with a magician's flair. We all applauded. There was a box, that much was right. A big one. At first, it looked like a junk drawer, a rock with googly eyes, an old horseshoe, a tasteless bronze leprechaun, things like that. But once I saw the text printed on the side, it all made sense. Kinda things. We decided to get them for you, a colleague said, leaning on my arm. We know how much you love them, so we all went out and got our kind of things. We figured you'd enjoy them. I've never been so proud to get a box of junk. The next few weeks were a blur. Moving trucks, cleaning, leases, putting those plastic buttons on the legs of new furniture so they don't scrape the floor, putting up shelves, straightening photos and paintings, washing the cloth for the kitchen table, making a space into a home, one tacky bachelor item at a time. All the while, I had a box resting on top of my closet, still proudly labeled kinda things. I got an apartment with 3 rooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen. I hadn't planned on living that large, but it was too cheap for me to pass up. I made one room into my bedroom and the other my living room, but I wasn't so sure about the third one. I decided I'd make it into a guest room somewhere down the line. For now, it was storage space. Somewhere for me to put boxes of memories that didn't quite matter. Not just the kind of things, but the baseball cards, the participation trophies, and the signed band shirts. It was all in there. I think most people have a space like that in one way or another. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time. I was settling into a new job, with new people in a new town. I was learning what places made the best tofu dishes. There was no time to reminisce. I had to look forward. If you don't, things in the rear view look bigger than they really are. On my first day of class, I brought the box of kinda things. I barely looked at it. I was too busy trying to keep the notes in my head organized. I couldn't half-ass my first day on the job. I had to make an impression, not just for my students, but there'd be a couple of new colleagues in the crowd. That's why I brought the box. Crowds love props. I shook hands with those who attended, introduced myself, and got a moderate crowd of about 40 people for my first day. Not just a class, but a couple of extras. I asked them all to sit up front as I unveiled the box. I had it turned outward toward the students. I barely saw the thing myself. No photos, I emphasized, shushing them with a finger like I was telling a secret. No pictures and no ownership. You can keep them, but they're never really yours. That got a couple of chuckles. I had a presentation ready and had them name a couple of kinda things in their own lives as I slowly pivoted into a metaphor related to my field of study. It was pretty clean. I'd used that particular setup a couple of times before. And yet, there was something about that one class that didn't sit right with me. I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't just being nervous about a new job. It was something about the crowd. Every time I looked back, my eyes got stuck on something. Like how you react to sudden movement, but with nothing changing. Something was putting me on edge, and I couldn't point my finger at what it was. Coming back home after a long day, I put my box of kinda things in the hallway and got myself a cold beer. I wasn't going anywhere, and I'd spent all my social energy in one go. There'd been muffins in the lounge, and everyone wanted to talk to me about my various articles. And, of course, the kinda things. Everyone always wants to tell me about their own kinda thing. I walked into my budding guest room with its mint green walls. I put down my beer and tossed the box back up on the closet. As I did, something tumbled out. My teddy bear keychain. It landed on the floor with a little rattle. I stood there for a moment, dumbfounded. It couldn't have been in the box. I would have seen it. Or maybe I put it there during the move and forgot about it. Strange. I hadn't seen it for a long time. I picked it up and rolled it between my fingers, looking at the colors and shapes. It wasn't like how I remembered it. It wasn't all blue like I thought it was. It was mostly gray with details of blue and red. The eyes looked like lemons. The heart in the center of its chest was a little smaller than I remembered. I decided to take the box back down to check if there was anything else I'd accidentally put in there that I'd forgotten about. I sat down on the floor, took another sip of beer, and opened the box. For a moment, my mind short-circuited. I had never seen any of those things before. There was an old-timey alarm clock with a broken spring, what looked like a watermelon paperweight, and a handheld dinner bell without the ringer thing in the middle. I hadn't seen any of those items before, and I was more than certain I'd gone through the box at least once or twice. But then, why couldn't I remember those things, and who gave them to me? I sat there trying to think of the names of the students who'd been there. I remembered them fairly well, but I couldn't point to who gave me what. That and little details about them had faded. Was it Josh or Joshua? Did one of them have an NHL or NBA cap? I can sort of remember the outline, but not the absolute details. It gave me a moment to pause. I considered that there might be such a thing as kind of people. Those people you spend a little time with every now and then, but never really get to know. Peripheral people. Pseudo people. If that's the case, who's to say I wasn't someone's kind of people? I mean, I had to be, right? I shook the thought out of my mind, finished my beer, and got up off the floor. I headed for the door, closed my hand around the handle, and pulled. Nothing happened. Had it always been opened outward? Of course it had. It was just a new apartment, and I was getting accustomed to it. And yet, I'm not one for being paranoid. Through all my years of talking about kinda things, I always considered them a fun thought experiment. Some talked about them like demons or ghost stories, like they were supposed to bring something horrible. I never saw it like that. They were just this idea to consider about the nature of permanence. They weren't malicious things. And yet, I started to get this uncomfortable sensation in my stomach whenever I passed by my guest room. It wasn't a conscious thought, just this sense of unease, like there would be something new for me to misremember if I entered that room with that box and didn't pay attention. I tried to remember exactly what I'd seen in that box and what color they were, but without going in there to check, there was no way to know for sure. That just made it worse. I finally decided I was going to indulge my superstition, just to demystify the whole thing. One weekend, I got my phone, a notepad, and decided I was going to write down and photograph everything in that box. After that, I would never have to think about it again. It could even be a fun thing to try against my students. Maybe I could ask them to remember as many things as possible from the box and cross-check it at the end of the semester to see how many points they score. I'd brought a small coffee table and a chair from the kitchen. I pulled the curtains open, letting in some moonlight. It was late May and the nights were growing shorter. Perfect for someone who'd run out of steam grading assignments all Friday. I took down the box from the top of the closet and noticed the teddy bear keychain. Nothing strange about it, other than it being in the box. I must have put it in there when I put the box back up. No point at getting antsy at the first item. Then again, the eyes looked more mango than lemon. How could I have been so certain about the lemon color? Maybe the moonlight made it look different. I brought out one item after another, only stopping briefly to think about who gave it to me. I remembered quite a lot of them. I could pretty clearly tell which of them were from my colleagues and which weren't. A couple of items were probably just random debris that one picked up just to be in on the joke. However, I suspected that quite a few things were probably authentic kindas. I went through the items one by one, taking pictures and writing their features down in a notebook. It was a strange feeling, sitting alone with so many uncertainties. About 3 dozen thought experiments, all neatly lined up and cataloged. The final item I wrote down was a little ceramic frog in a tux, smoking a cigar. There were some folks outside making a ruckus, so I got up to close the guest room door. I paused for a moment to consider which way the door went. It opened outward. Sitting back down, I took a closer look at the ceramic frog knick-knack. It wasn't smoking a cigar. It was more like a cigarette. A long, lean one. It wasn't a big detail, but it was enough to make me doubt myself. What if I had cataloged something else wrong? Just a teeny tiny bit wrong. That would put the whole thing into question. I had to be certain. I went back along the line of items, double-checking. I made a few corrections. The alarm clock was stuck on 1:30, not 1:25. The broken spring went around 6 times with a twirl at the end, not 7 times with a straight end. And finally, I was back to my teddy bear keychain. I wrote down the details as I remembered them. Scratching my head, I got up. I needed a break anyway. I went back to the guest room door and tugged on the handle. It was supposed to open outward, but it didn't. I pulled it inward instead. That didn't work either.
Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.